Hi everyone, it's Ollie from Magic Hands Hobbies. Welcome to my second video on my YouTube channel. I was going to talk about how I'm painting this mini from the Games Workshop Blood Bowl Season 2 box set today, but Varag Ghoul Chewer. However, my ideas took a different direction. This video is aimed at those who have doubts in their own abilities, both as a hobbyist and a potential YouTuber. Being new to YouTube myself, I'm obviously talking from experience. So I hope it all makes sense and that you understand where I'm coming from. Anyway, on with the video. One of my first ever comments was left in support of the work that I do, but they asked a rather interesting question. What is it that I can bring to the hobby that makes me different? This got me thinking exactly that, but not in a negative, destructive way, but in a positive, creative way. In this hobby, there are only so many ways in which you can paint a model, create a piece of scenery, or even make a diorama, and for the most part, all the variations have been explored. When we watch videos and tutorials and implement them into our own projects, quite often a good idea will come to a crafter and then be shared to the masses, but the underlying techniques remain the same. I tell people I have my own style, but is it truly mine? Everything I know about painting minis has been taught to me either through education, publications, videos, or physical lessons. So in that way, can I really say that it is my own style? You could argue that it's not the techniques, but the way in which you implement them. I like to think that my minis look like they're straight out of a comic. However, I have seen so many other painters who can achieve the same effect to the same standard or better. So I can't really say that it's mine, or can I? I'm not sure what I have to offer that would differentiate me from anyone else in terms of technique through painting. Crafting, on the other hand, offers a far more opportunity to improvise, either through use of alternative materials, altering an already explored technique, or coming up with a solution to a problem where you're trying to create a specific piece of scenery. I have projects on the go already, as shown on my Facebook page and Instagram, and I certainly will make videos of these. My main project at the moment is a Skaven Blood Bowl stadium, which is only partly complete at this point, but I have a number of ideas that will hopefully inspire others with their own creations. So with that in mind, what is it that I, you, or any other hobbyist with a new YouTube channel can bring to the table? Maybe it's the little things. Maybe it's those slight variations, the collective intricacies of an individual, and how knowledge of techniques that are commonly used within our hobby are applied to the project in hand. There may be something that you have seen in a model or project from a hobbyist that had you hooked. It might be that they are painting a mini that you are planning on painting yourself, and you simply want to imitate the colours and styles. Another option might be the way in which someone presents themselves on their channel, with humour, great personality, personal engagement of the audience, or even just great editing. Maybe there doesn't need to be anything in particular that attracts you to a hobbyist, and it is simply the experience of sharing with others and being a part of a growing community where we put ourselves on display for the enjoyment of sharing our achievements with others. Ultimately, I'm not sure that I can honestly say that I can give you something different, at least not from my perspective. You might say different and keep coming back for a specific reason, or maybe you have no idea what the reason is. In any case, does it really matter? If you are new to the hobby, then there will also be a second question on your mind. Are you good enough? Now, I've asked this question many times during my time in the hobby, and even now I still wonder the same thing. Can I be better? Can I be as good as that person? Am I good enough to enter competitions? Can I achieve the same level of quality and workmanship as a Golden Demon winner? Even as I sit here talking, I now ask myself, do I have the right to even make these videos? Will people like what I do? I'm by no means an expert in this hobby, but I'm not bad at it either. There will always be someone that I view as being better than me. And by that means, there will always be someone looking up at me asking themselves, can they be as good as me? I have been painting models and miniatures since about the age of 10. When I started, I thought that my models were really good. In the eyes of a 10-year-old, they probably were. But when I look back at what I used to do, They were awful. There isn't any other way of putting it. But I was learning and teaching myself how to paint, seeing as I didn't have access to any tutorials. I couldn't afford to pay for magazines to teach me how. There was no YouTube at the time, and I certainly didn't have money to buy huge selections of paints. I also didn't know the difference between acrylics and enamels, other than the smell and the fact that one of them you could clean with just using water. Let's dig a little into my past here. Now, I started this hobby with painting model aircraft using enamels. I once had an airbrush that attached to the top of an aerosol can of compressed air. Neither proved to be very good, not through any fault of the manufacturers, but purely of my lack of knowledge and understanding of how to paint. My first minis were from the Advanced HeroQuest box, and I remember being so excited to paint them, but I only had a small collection of Humbrol enamel paints at the time, so I had to be creative with it. And one of the ways that I did that was to use a fine line marker pen to mark out the recesses and create the shadow lines. Yep, I know, what on earth was I thinking? But you know what? It did the job, at least in the imagination of a young boy. I was quite impressed with it. Whilst I thought it was amazing and made my models look like something out of a comic, it didn't. But it was good enough for me. I'm pretty sure that I still have some of those models somewhere in storage, probably lying about in some random box in the garage. I later got a copy of Space Crusade for Christmas. I remember being mesmerised by the advert on TV. This was my introduction to Space Marines, though I didn't really know about what that meant until I went to the Games Workshop with some Christmas money in order to buy some more paints. I was instantly hooked. When I walked through that door and I saw the array of cellophane wrapped boxes all neatly aligned on the shelf, the rainbow of colours on the paint racks, and felt the buzz in the air with the games that were being played at the various tables. But you know what? Best of all were the display stands. The various armies on parade, beautifully painted, drawing people into the store and pushing the idea of owning your own armies. I bought a Citadel colour paint set, which had the base colours needed: ultramarine blue, blood red, sunburst yellow, goblin green, snakebite leather, skull white, bronzed flesh, chaos black, bolt gun metal, and a flesh wash. I also bought a black wash, but I forget what the name of it was at the time. My eyes were open to the new possibilities and new terminology of techniques, shadows, highlights, washes, dry brushing. You know what? I just couldn't wait. However, I still didn't have all that I needed to achieve the look that I wanted at the time. Whilst I had the flesh wash and black wash, I had no others. I improvised. I used an old set of watercolour paints, you know, the little ones with the little round tablets set into this little moulded plastic. It was odd, but you know what? It did the job. It worked. With my new paints in hand, I learnt about base coating, the use of base colours and the application of a wash. This opened my eyes to a whole new way of painting. The washes took the base colours to a new level, and I was amazed how it created shadows and highlights all in one go. I then learnt about reapplying the majority of the base colour and even to start adding highlights. The majority of my later development of techniques came mainly through experimentation while trying to imitate what I could see in the White Dwarf magazines or from just the box art. It wasn't until YouTube came along that I was able to see just what was really achievable and how to do it. Seeing what others could do filled me with both confidence but also a degree of doubt. I have quite an arty mind and ability, but I've never really pushed myself. I'm certain that I have the ability to take on and achieve a high level of quality, but there was also that little voice in the back of my head telling me that I would never be good enough to enter a competition, and I still haven't to this day. Does this mean that I shouldn't in the future? No, of course not. In fact, I regret not entering competitions so far. I could have gotten some valuable feedback for my method, and so I may well enter in the future. My daughter, who is 9 years old, has expressed an interest in painting models. So far she's only painted 2. The first was a female wizard/fighter type character from a D&D range that I have. It was okay. She kept going outside the lines for the most part, used a variety of colours. More importantly, you know what? She had fun doing it. A few months later, she also wanted to paint another one. This time I gave her a figure from 40k. She applied the base coats, much neater this time. Then I gave her some Nuln Oil. At first she was very reluctant. She thought that I was going to ruin the paint scheme that she'd done. But the look on her face, once that Nuln Oil had dried, was something else. She couldn't believe that she had painted it for herself. I have to admit, it turned out pretty darn good. Far better than I had achieved at her age. Painting techniques back then weren't exactly as advanced as they are now. There are many different techniques that can be implemented, and such a variety of paints that you can achieve endless variations. This hobby community is a great place, and I've come across very little animosity, hate, or even criticism that wasn't constructive in some way. Almost everyone that I have encountered in my experience so far has been positive and encouraging, with almost all aspects leading to discussions where alternatives and options are brought up, some rejected by others, considered or even accepted. At the end of the day, I don't think it matters what I can bring to the table that might be different to somebody else. It's what you see in what I'm doing. I will try my best to paint in a way that you admire. I will try my best to give you someone to look up to. Even if you don't look up to me, even if you are a pro painter, it doesn't mean that there isn't something that I might give you, even by accident, as a suggestion, something that might improve your hobby. That's not to say that I am the best. I'm not the best. But it's just to say that there are always people out there looking up at you, and there are always people looking for inspiration. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the worst. You will never be the worst. You are always improving. You should always look positively at the work you do. Ultimately, you're not doing this for anybody else. You're doing this for you. Unless, of course, you're doing some commission work, in which case you are doing it for someone else, and in which case you better make damn sure that you've actually done a good job, or at least you've managed their expectations as to what you can achieve. But ultimately, those people will know what you can do, and they're asking you to do it because they like your work. If they like your work, it gives you momentum. It allows you to move forward, to learn, and to keep pushing forward. And I suppose that might well be the moral of the story. Keep going forward. Take criticism on board, hopefully constructive criticism, and just enjoy yourself. Enjoy the hobby. Enjoy the journey that you are going on. And one day, you'll get there. You will get to where you think you could never get to. Well, that's all I really wanted to say. You can see I haven't finished painting the model at this point. I've employed various techniques that everybody knows about. The only one that potentially I have done differently that I've been questioned about in the past is how I do my metal, rusted metal in particular. Now all I do is I put down a silver base. Usually I go for something a bit darker than what I've used here. I was experimenting again. Without experimenting you won't learn anything. So I put down a brighter silver and a black wash. In this particular case I use Nuln Oil, but any black wash would work. Not sure about oil washes at this particular point. Not sure how well that would work. Just don't think that it would work in the same way for this technique. Once that's done, you then get brown wash. Again, I was using the Games Workshop's Agrax Earthshade, and I was basically stippling it onto the black wash and the silver that was already there. And by stippling it, you're making a patchy, blotchy area, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. Sometimes I come back with a second layer of it if it's not quite as impactful as I wanted, but usually once is good enough. After that, I'll then use the technical paints, the rust paints from Games Workshop. Now, there are other rust paints, technical paints out there. They all do the same job. Just get a bit on the brush, dry brush it, and just catch those edges, smudge some over the paint, and you'll get a feeling for what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. Just experiment at the end of the day. Then you'll see that I also put on a few bits of colour to give the impression of flaked paint. And again, just use a stippling motion, put the paint on that you want, build up the colours, but leave the base colours exposed. This shows that the paint looks worn. I'm going to be exploring all of these techniques in later videos, and I will talk about them in much greater depth. This video in particular, even though it's my second one, I want to talk about something different, and hopefully everybody's taken on board what I've said and enjoyed the video. This is about the end of it. I'm going to show the miniature based and finished at the end. It's the usual kind of thing. I've put down the crackle paint, can't remember what it's called, it'll come up in a minute, from Games Workshop, left it to dry, and then I've simply applied a few tufts and a few white lines so that it looks like the Blood Bowl pitch. Am I happy with the model? Yeah, it's okay. Could I have done better? Yeah, I probably could. I probably could have put more effort into it. But for the style of the Black Orc team that I've done, it works. So I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one. And yeah, have a good one. All right.